June 6, 1984. Frankfurt, Germany. I stood outside a small apartment building in a quiet neighborhood, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the piece of paper with the address. And after 40 years of searching, I was finally about to meet the man who saved my life when he should have killed me. If this story moves you, please hit that subscribe button and like this video. Comment below and tell me about acts of mercy you've witnessed. Because sometimes humanity survives even in war's darkest moments. Your support keeps these stories alive. My name is James Sullivan. I'm 62 years old. I'm a retired postal worker from Philadelphia. I have 3 kids, 6 grandchildren, a wife who's put up with me for 38 years, and a piece of German shrapnel still lodged near my spine that the doctor said would kill me if they tried to remove it. That shrapnel has been there since June 7, 1944, the day after D-Day, the day a German soldier named Karl Weber chose mercy over duty, humanity over hate, and saved the life of his enemy. This is the story of how I spent 40 years searching for him, and why, when I finally found him, the first word I said was brother. But to understand that moment, you need to understand June 6, 1944. You need to understand what it means to storm a beach when the entire world is trying to kill you. You need to understand the kind of courage it takes to save a man who moments before was trying to kill you. Let me take you back. Back to when I was 22 years old and thought I knew what war was. I grew up in South Philadelphia, the son of Irish immigrants. My father worked the docks, my mother cleaned houses. We lived in a row house on Carpenter Street with 6 other families in similar situations, all working class, all struggling, all believing that America was the land of opportunity if you just worked hard enough. I believed it too. I graduated high school in 1940, got a job at the post office, started dating a girl named Dorothy who worked at the Five and Dime. Life was simple. Life was good. Then, December 7th, 1941 happened. Pearl Harbor. I was at home listening to a Phillies game on the radio when the announcement came through. The voice of the announcer shaking as he read the bulletin. The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor. We are at war. My father looked at me across the dinner table. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. We both knew what was coming. I enlisted on December 10, 1941, didn't wait to be drafted. Walked into the Army recruiting office at 5th and Market, signed my name, and became Private James Sullivan, United States Army. I was 19 years old and thought war would be an adventure. Basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey, beat that notion out of me pretty quickly. 12 weeks of hell, running until you vomited, obstacle courses, rifle training, bayonet drills where instructors screamed at you to kill, kill, kill while you stabbed dummies. Gas mask training where they filled a room with tear gas and made you take your mask off so you'd know what gas feels like. But the worst part was the lectures. Officers who'd fought in the Great War telling us what combat was really like. The smell, the noise, the way your best friend could be talking to you one second and dead the next. The way you'd step over bodies and not even notice after a while because there were too many and you had to keep moving. War isn't heroic, one captain told us. War is surviving, that's all. You survive today, then you try to survive tomorrow. String enough of those together and maybe you go home. That's it. That's war. I didn't believe him. Not really. How could I? I was 19. I was invincible. I was going to Europe to kill Nazis and save the world and come home a hero. I finished basic training in March 1942. Got assigned to the 29th Infantry Division. Spent the next 2 years training. More training. Always more training. Amphibious assault training. Urban combat training. Night fighting. Hand-to-hand combat. They were preparing us for something big, though they wouldn't tell us what. In September 1943, they shipped us to England. We sailed from New York Harbor on a transport ship packed with 10,000 other soldiers. I stood on the deck as the Statue of Liberty disappeared behind us and wondered if I'd ever see it again. England was cold and wet and miserable. We trained in the countryside, running through mock-up villages, practicing beach assaults on the English coast. The British civilians were kind but tired. They'd been at war for 4 years already. You could see it in their faces, the exhaustion, the resignation, the knowledge that this war wasn't ending anytime soon. I made friends in my unit, good men. Johnny Martinez from Texas, who could make anyone laugh no matter how miserable we were. Robert Bobby O'Connor from Boston, who played harmonica and sang Irish songs around campfires. Tommy Peterson from Iowa, barely 18 years old, who wrote letters to his mother every single day. Frank Kowalski from Chicago, tough as nails, who'd worked in the stockyards since he was 12. We became brothers, not by blood but by something stronger. We trained together, ate together, got drunk together on warm English beer, complained about officers together, shared photographs of girlfriends and wives and mothers, made promises to visit each other's hometowns after the war. "First thing I'm doing when I get home," Johnny said one night, "is eating my mama's enchiladas. Real enchiladas, not this English garbage they call food. First thing I'm doing," Bobby said, "is marrying Catherine. Got the ring already. Been carrying it for 6 months. Soon as we get back, I'm putting that ring on her finger." "The first thing I'm doing," I said, "is sleeping in my own bed for about a month straight. No more barracks, no more snoring, no more sergeants screaming at 500. We all laughed. We all knew we were lying. We all knew that the first thing we'd do is try to forget. Try to become normal again, try to pretend we hadn't seen what we were about to see. In May 1944, the training intensified. We knew something was coming. The invasion. The big one. The assault on Nazi-occupied Europe that everyone had been talking about for years. We didn't know when, we didn't know where, but we knew it was soon. They locked down the bases, no one in or out. We were sealed in camps across southern England, thousands of soldiers waiting, training, preparing. The tension was unbearable. Guys played cards constantly. Others wrote letters home that might be their last. Some guys prayed. Some guys got into fights just to have something to do with the nervous energy. On June 4th, they told us. We were briefed by our officers. Maps, photographs, intelligence reports. The target, Normandy, France. 5 beaches, Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juneau, Sword. The 29th Infantry Division was assigned to Omaha Beach, along with the 1st Infantry Division. "Gentlemen," our colonel said, "this is it. This is what we've been training for. The liberation of Europe starts with us. We hit that beach, we secure it, we move inland. The Navy will bombard the German positions before we land. The Air Force will bomb them. By the time you hit that beach, there shouldn't be much left. But if there is, you kill it. You take that beach. You hold that beach. And then you march all the way to Berlin. Any questions?" 1,000 questions, but nobody asked any of them. What was the point? We were going. Questions wouldn't change that. They gave us the invasion date, June 5th, 1944. But weather postponed it. Bad storms in the Channel. We spent June 5th packed onto landing craft, rolling in heavy seas, most guys vomiting over the side. Then word came down, postponed 24 hours. June 6th was the new date. We spent the night of June 5th on those landing craft. Cold, wet, miserable, scared. Nobody slept. We just sat there in the dark, listening to the waves slap against the hull, listening to guys pray or cry or talk to themselves. Bobby sat next to me. He pulled out his harmonica but didn't play it, just held it. "You think we'll make it, Jimmy?" "Yeah," I lied, "we'll make it. I got a bad feeling about this one." "You get a bad feeling about everything. Remember when you said the food in the mess hall was going to kill us? We're still here." He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "This is different. This feels different." He was right. We both knew it. This wasn't training. This wasn't a drill. This was the real thing. And a lot of us weren't coming back. June 6, 1944. 06:30 hours, H hour. The ramp dropped on our landing craft and I saw Omaha Beach for the first time. It looked like hell had opened up and spilled onto the earth. The beach was maybe 300 yards wide, flat sand leading to a seawall, then bluffs rising up maybe 100 feet. The Germans had fortified those bluffs with concrete bunkers, machine gun nests, artillery positions. They had the entire beach covered with overlapping fields of fire. And they were shooting at us. The noise was indescribable. Machine guns, artillery, naval guns firing from ships behind us, aircraft overhead, explosions, screaming, all of it blending into a roar that made thought impossible. "Go, go, go!" the lieutenant screamed. "Off the boat! Move, move, move!" I jumped into the water. It was deeper than I expected, up to my chest. Cold. The weight of my pack and rifle and ammunition tried to drag me under. I pushed forward, fighting the current, fighting the weight, fighting the terror that was threatening to paralyze me. Men were dying around me. I saw it but couldn't process it. Bullets hitting the water, bullets hitting men, bodies floating, the water turning red, screaming, so much screaming. I made it to the beach, threw myself down on the sand. Bullets cracked overhead, zipping past, so close I could feel the displacement of air. Artillery shells exploded, throwing up geysers of sand and shrapnel. "Move up!" someone screamed. "Get off the beach!" But moving meant dying. Every time someone stood up, every time someone ran, the German machine guns cut them down. Bodies were piling up at the waterline, at the seawall. The beach was becoming a graveyard. I saw Bobby. He was maybe 20 feet to my right, pressed against the sand, his harmonica fallen beside him. He looked at me. Our eyes met. He opened his mouth to say something. Then his head snapped back and he was gone. Just like that. 1 second he was there, the next he wasn't. The Bobby I'd known for 2 years, who'd shared his cigarettes and played Irish songs and was going to marry Catherine, gone in an instant. I screamed. I don't remember what I screamed. Maybe his name, maybe nothing. Just screamed. "Sullivan!" Johnny grabbed my shoulder. "We gotta move. We stay here, we die." He was right. The only way off this beach was forward. The only way to survive was to attack. Staying put meant dying slowly instead of quickly, but dying just the same. "Engineers!" someone was shouting. "Blow the wire! Blow the obstacles!" Engineers with satchel charges were running forward, trying to blow gaps in the German defenses. Many died before they could place their charges. But some made it. Explosions ripped through barbed wire and wooden obstacles. "Move! Move! Move!" I got up and ran toward the seawall, ran through machine gun fire and artillery and death. Men fell around me. I kept running, made it to the seawall, threw myself against it, gasping, shaking. The seawall was concrete, maybe 4 feet high. It provided cover from the machine guns, but artillery was still falling, and we couldn't stay here. We had to get up those bluffs, had to take out the German positions. "Bangalore torpedoes!" A sergeant was organizing men to blow the wire at the top of the seawall. Long metal tubes packed with explosives pushed under the wire, detonated. More explosions, more gaps. "Up, up, up! Get up those bluffs!" I climbed over the seawall, started up the bluff. It was steep, loose sand and grass and rocks, hard to get footing, easy target for the Germans above. But we climbed. Some guys made it, some guys didn't. I was maybe halfway up when I saw the German soldier. He was in a trench at the top of the bluff, firing down at us with a Mauser rifle. Young, maybe my age, helmet, grey uniform, terrified eyes. He fired, missed me, worked the bolt, fired again. This time he didn't miss. The bullet hit me in the left side, just below my ribs. I felt it punch through, felt the shock, felt my legs give out. I fell, tumbled down the bluff, landed hard at the bottom, couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The pain came in waves, each one worse than the last. I lay there, bleeding into the sand, watching the battle continue around me. Men climbing the bluffs, men dying, men succeeding. The tide of the battle was turning. We were getting off the beach. We were taking the positions. But I wasn't part of it anymore. I was done. Johnny found me. "Jimmy! Jesus, Jimmy, hang on!" He tried to drag me to cover. Artillery exploded nearby. Shrapnel ripped through the air. Something hit Johnny. He gasped, stumbled, fell across me. "Johnny!" I grabbed him. He was bleeding from his neck. Bad, real bad. His eyes were wide, confused. "Johnny, stay with me! Medic! Medic!" But there were no medics. They were all busy or dead. Johnny's eyes found mine. He tried to say something. Couldn't. Blood bubbled from his mouth. Then his eyes went empty and he was gone. I held him. I don't know for how long. Time didn't mean anything anymore. Just held my friend while the battle raged around us and the beach filled with bodies and the world ended over and over again. Eventually I couldn't hold him anymore. I was too weak. I laid him down gently, tried to close his eyes like they do in movies, but his eyelids wouldn't stay closed. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." I tried to crawl, tried to get to cover. Couldn't. My body wasn't working right. I'd lost too much blood. Everything was getting dim, fuzzy, cold. This is it, I thought. This is how I die. On a beach in France. 22 years old. Never married Dorothy. Never saw Philadelphia again. Never did anything except die on a beach. I closed my eyes. Waited for it to be over. That's when I heard German voices, close, very close. I opened my eyes. 3 German soldiers were moving through the area, checking bodies, looking for wounded Americans. They were finishing them off. Mercy killings, maybe. Or just making sure there were no threats left. One of them saw me. Young guy, maybe 20. He raised his rifle, pointed it at my head. I looked up at him. Didn't have the energy to be scared anymore. Just looked. He was about to pull the trigger when another German soldier grabbed his arm. Older, maybe 30, sergeant's insignia. They argued in German, rapid and heated. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the meaning. The young one wanted to shoot me. The sergeant wouldn't let him. The sergeant knelt beside me, looked at my wound, said something in German. Then, in heavily accented English, "You are badly wounded." I tried to answer, just coughed up blood. He looked around, made a decision. "I will help you, but you must be quiet. Verstehen? Understand?" I nodded. Didn't understand why, didn't understand anything anymore. He grabbed me under the arms, started dragging me, away from the beach, into the bluffs, into cover. The young soldier was protesting. The sergeant snapped something at him and he shut up. They dragged me into a shell crater. The sergeant opened my jacket, examined the wound. Bullet passed through. Good. No bullet inside, but much blood. He pulled out a field dressing, pressed it against the wound. I gasped from the pain. "I am sorry, but this will help." "Why?" I managed to whisper. "Why are you helping me?" He looked at me. His eyes were old, tired, sad. "Because I am tired of killing. Because you are someone's son. Because—" He trailed off. Then, "Because it is the right thing." He finished bandaging me, gave me water from his canteen. "American aid station is that way," he pointed. "Maybe 1 kilometer. Wait until dark. Then crawl. Can you do this?" I nodded. "Good." He stood up, looked down at me. "I am Feldwebel Karl Weber, 352nd Infantry Division. If you survive this war, remember that not all Germans are monsters." Then he left, just walked away, back to his lines, back to the battle, leaving me alive when he should have killed me. I lay in that crater for hours. The battle continued around me. American forces eventually broke through, pushed inland. The Germans retreated. By nightfall, Omaha Beach was secured. Thousands of Americans were dead, but we'd taken the beach. I waited until it was fully dark. Then I crawled. It took me hours. Every movement was agony. But I crawled. 1 meter, then another, then another. I made it to an American aid station around midnight, collapsed at the entrance. Someone shouted, hands grabbed me. They carried me inside. "Gunshot wound, still bleeding, get him stabilized." Everything went black. I woke up in a field hospital in England, 3 weeks after D-Day. They told me I'd been evacuated from Normandy, that I'd nearly died from blood loss and infection, that the shrapnel from the artillery that killed Johnny had lodged near my spine, that I was lucky to be alive. Lucky. I didn't feel lucky, I felt hollow. Bobby was dead. Johnny was dead. Tommy had died on the beach, I learned later. Frank made it off the beach but died 2 days later from wounds. Of the 5 of us who'd been so close, who'd promised to visit each other after the war, I was the only one left. Survivor's guilt. That's what the doctors called it. I called it knowing that better men died while I lived. But I also knew something else. I knew that a German soldier named Karl Weber had saved my life when he could have killed me. Should have killed me. Every military logic said he should have put a bullet in my head and moved on. But he didn't. He chose mercy. He chose humanity. In the middle of the worst battle of the war, with thousands dying around him, with every reason to hate me and kill me, he chose to save me. Why? That question haunted me. For weeks in the hospital, then months during recovery, then years after I went home. Why did he save me? What made him choose mercy? Did he survive? Did he go home? Did he have a family? Was he haunted by the war the way I was? I needed to know. I needed to find him. I needed to thank him. I needed to understand. But first, I had to survive the rest of my recovery and go home. They shipped me back to the States in September 1944. Medical discharge. The shrapnel near my spine meant I was done fighting. The army was done with me. I came home to Philadelphia a different person than the one who'd left. I looked the same, thinner, with a scar on my side and a limp I'd have forever. But inside I was changed, broken in ways that didn't show. Dorothy tried. God, she tried. She was there when I got off the bus, ran to me, hugged me, cried, "You're home, thank God you're home." But I wasn't really home. Part of me was still on Omaha Beach, watching Bobby die, holding Johnny while his blood soaked into the sand. Part of me was in that shell crater, looking up at a German sergeant who should have killed me, but didn't. I tried to go back to my old life, got my job back at the post office, married Dorothy in 1946. We had kids, 3 beautiful kids. I should have been happy. I had everything I'd wanted before the war, but the nightmares wouldn't stop. I'd wake up screaming, covered in sweat, seeing the beach, hearing the machine guns, watching my friends die. Dorothy would hold me, and I'd pretend I was okay. But I wasn't okay. I was never okay after that. And I couldn't forget Karl Weber, the German who'd saved me. I needed to find him, needed to thank him, needed to know his story. So I started searching. It wasn't easy. This was 1946. Germany was in ruins. The country was divided between Allied occupation zones. Records were destroyed or scattered. Millions of German soldiers were dead or missing. Finding one specific man seemed impossible. But I tried anyway. I wrote to the U.S. Army, asking for information about German units at Omaha Beach. They sent me lists. The 352nd Infantry Division had defended that sector. But the lists were incomplete, and many names were just listed as killed or missing. I wrote to the Red Cross, to veteran organizations, to anyone who might have information. Most letters went unanswered. Those that did respond said the same thing. Too many casualties, records lost, impossible to track individuals. The years passed. 1950, 1955, 1960. I kept searching. I learned German so I could write letters to German veteran organizations. I sent dozens of letters, got back a handful of responses, none helpful. My kids grew up. Dorothy kept asking why I was obsessed with finding this German soldier. I couldn't explain it in a way that made sense. How do you explain that you owe your life to your enemy? How do you explain that you need to find the man who showed you that humanity exists even in war? "Let it go, James," she said. "The war is over. You're home. You're alive. That's enough." But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. Not until I found him. 26 years after D-Day. I was 48 years old. My kids were grown. I'd worked at the post office for decades. I'd lived a normal, quiet life, but the search continued. Then, in 1972, I got a break. A German veteran I'd been corresponding with sent me a list of names, survivors of the 352nd Infantry Division, who were part of a veterans group in Germany. And there, halfway down the list, Karl Weber, Karlsruhe, West Germany. My hands shook as I read the name. 28 years. I'd been searching for 28 years. I wrote immediately, in German, explaining who I was, what had happened on June 7th, 1944, asking if he remembered, asking if we could meet. I waited, weeks, months, no response. I wrote again, nothing. Maybe he didn't remember. Maybe he didn't want to remember. Maybe I had the wrong Karl Weber. It's a common name in Germany. Maybe he was dead. But I couldn't give up. Not after 28 years. In 1978, I retired from the post office. Dorothy and I had saved money. The kids were independent. I made a decision. I'm going to Germany, I told Dorothy. I'm going to find him. She looked at me for a long time. Then she nodded. I know. You need to do this. Just come home when you're done, okay? I will. I flew to Frankfurt in September 1978, took a train to Karlsruhe, found the address from the veterans list. It was an apartment building in a quiet neighborhood, clean, orderly, very German. I stood outside, gathering courage. What would I say? What if he didn't remember? What if he refused to see me? What if... I knocked on the door before I could change my mind. An elderly German woman answered, maybe 60. She looked at me suspiciously. Ja? Sprechen Sie English? I asked. My German was functional but not great. A little. What do you want? I'm looking for Karl Weber, Feldwebel Weber, from the 352nd Infantry Division. Her expression changed, softened. You are American? Yes, He saved my life. During the war, at Normandy. I've been searching for him for 34 years. I just want to thank him. She studied me for a long moment. Then, my husband is dead. He died in 1975. Heart attack. The words hit me like a bullet. Dead. After all these years, all this searching, he was dead. 3 years dead. I'd missed him by 3 years. I must have looked devastated because the woman's expression shifted to pity. I am sorry. I know he wrote letters to a veterans organization. Maybe someone there can help you? Did he ever mention Normandy, saving an American soldier? She hesitated, then nodded. Yes, he spoke of it. Not often. The war was painful for him. But he mentioned it. He said it was the only good thing he did in the war. Saving one life when he had taken so many. I felt tears on my face, didn't bother wiping them away. I wanted to thank him. I wanted him to know that he gave me a life, a family, 56 years. I wanted him to know that his mercy mattered. The woman, Karl's widow, looked at me with sad, kind eyes. He knew it mattered. Come, I will show you something. She led me inside. The apartment was modest, neat, filled with photographs. She pointed to one on the wall, a young German soldier in uniform, Karl Weber, the same face I'd seen for just moments in that shell crater 34 years ago. I recognized him instantly. He kept a journal, she said, from the war. He never let me read it. Too painful, he said. But after he died, I read it. He wrote about you. About the American he saved on June 7th, 1944. Would you like to see? She brought out an old leather journal, opened it to a page, June 7th, 1944, written in German, but she translated, Today I saved an American soldier. He was dying on the beach. I could have killed him. I should have killed him, but I could not. I looked into his eyes and saw myself, scared, young, far from home. I could not add another death to my conscience. I helped him instead, disobeyed orders, risked court-martial, but I do not regret it. If I die in this war, at least I will die knowing I saved one life. That has to count for something. I couldn't speak. Just stood there, tears streaming down my face, holding this journal that proved what I'd spent decades trying to verify. Karl Weber had saved me, and it had mattered to him as much as it mattered to me. His widow touched my arm gently. He would have been glad to know you survived, that his mercy was not wasted. Thank you for coming. Thank you for remembering him. I left Karlsruhe that day feeling empty and full at the same time. Empty because I'd never get to thank Karl in person. Full because I knew, finally, that he'd known his choice mattered. But the story didn't end there. Because Karl Weber had a son. I learned this in 1982, 4 years after my visit to Karlsruhe. Karl's widow sent me a letter. Her son, Michael Weber, wanted to meet me. He'd read his father's journal. He wanted to meet the American his father had saved. And that's how, in June 1984, 40 years after D-Day, I found myself standing outside an apartment building in Frankfurt, Germany, about to meet the son of the man who'd saved my life. I knocked on the door. A man answered, maybe 40 years old. He had his father's eyes, his father's face. We stared at each other for a moment. Then Michael Weber said, in accented English, "You are James Sullivan, the American my father saved." "Yes. Come in, please. We have much to talk about." We sat in his living room. He brought out coffee. We didn't speak at first. Just sat there, two strangers connected by a moment of mercy 4 decades ago. Finally, Michael said, "My father spoke of you. Not often. The war was painful for him. But he said saving you was the only thing he did not regret. He said it gave him hope. That maybe he was not just a killer, that maybe he was still human. I've spent 40 years trying to find him," I said. "To thank him, to tell him that his mercy gave me a life, a family, everything. I wish I'd found him before he died." He knew. I promise you he knew. He kept a photograph. Michael stood, went to a drawer, pulled out a small photo. It showed a young German soldier in uniform. On the back, in faded ink, Normandy, 1944. The day I chose mercy. We talked for hours. Michael told me about his father, about his struggles after the war, the guilt, the nightmares, the shame of having fought for Germany, even though Karl had been conscripted, had no choice, had never been a Nazi. He was a good man caught in an evil war, Michael said. He did terrible things because he was ordered to, but he also did one good thing, you, and that mattered to him. I told Michael about my life, about Dorothy and our kids, about my grandchildren, but how I'd lived 56 years because his father chose mercy. As the sun set, Michael looked at me and said, "My father would have wanted us to meet, would have wanted us to know each other, not as enemies, but as," he struggled for the word, "brothers," I said. "As brothers." Michael smiled, extended his hand. "Yes, brothers." I took his hand, and in that moment, I felt the weight of 40 years lift. The search was over. The debt was acknowledged. The mercy had come full circle. Karl Weber had saved my life on June 7, 1944, and 40 years later, his son and I stood together, brothers across a war that had tried to make us enemies. That's where part 1 of this story ends, in a living room in Frankfurt, with 2 sons of war finally understanding what their fathers had known, that humanity survives even in the darkest times, that mercy matters, that we are not defined by the worst moments of history, but by the choices we make within them. Michael Weber and I sat in his Frankfurt apartment until well past midnight that first night in June 1984. We talked about everything and nothing, about our fathers, about the war, about what it meant to be the sons of men who'd been on opposite sides of history's greatest conflict. But mostly, we talked about mercy. "My father carried guilt his entire life," Michael said, refilling our coffee cups for the 3rd time. "He was conscripted in 1939. He didn't want to fight. He wasn't a Nazi. He hated Hitler, hated the party, hated what they were doing to Germany. But he was 25 years old, and if you refused conscription, they shot you or sent you to a camp. So he went. He fought, because the alternative was death. I nodded. I'd learned enough about Germany in my decades of searching to understand this. Not every German soldier was a Nazi. Many were just men caught in a machine they couldn't escape. After the war, Michael continued, it was hard for German veterans. Very hard. The world saw us all as monsters. And yes, terrible things were done. Unforgivable things. The Holocaust, war crimes, atrocities. My father knew about some of it. Not everything. He was just a sergeant in an infantry division. But enough, and he carried that shame. The shame of having worn the uniform, of having fought for that regime, even though he had no choice. How did he cope? I asked. Michael smiled sadly. Not well. He drank too much, had nightmares, couldn't hold a job for years. My mother, you met her, his widow, she saved him. She was patient. She loved him, despite everything. She helped him find work, helped him rebuild. But he was never the same man he was before the war. Nobody was. I understood that completely. I'd lived it myself. The nightmares, the guilt, the feeling that you'd left the best parts of yourself on a battlefield and came home as something less. But saving you, Michael said, looking at me intently, that mattered to him. He wrote about it in his journal many times over the years. He said it was proof that he was still human, that despite everything he'd done, despite all the men he'd killed in combat, he'd also saved one. And that one act of mercy kept him from complete despair. I felt tears on my face again. I wish I could have told him. I wish I could have told him that his mercy gave me everything. 56 years of life. A wife, 3 children, 6 grandchildren, a career, a home, everything. All of it because he chose not to pull that trigger. He knew, Michael said. Maybe not the details, but he knew. He had to know that saving you meant something. That's why he did it. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Michael stood up, went to a cabinet, and pulled out a bottle of schnapps. My father kept this for special occasions. I think this qualifies. He poured 2 glasses, handed one to me, raised his. To my father, Karl Weber, a good man in a terrible war. To Karl Weber, I echoed, the man who taught me that humanity survives even in hell. We drank. The schnapps burned, going down. Good burn, clean. James, Michael said, I would like to be your friend. Not just because of what my father did, but because I think we understand each other. We both grew up in the shadow of that war. We both carry our father's legacies, and I think we can help each other carry those burdens. I extended my hand. I'd like that very much. He shook it firmly, then pulled me into a hug. Brother, he said. Brother, I agreed, and that's how it started. A friendship that would last the rest of my life. I stayed in Frankfurt for 2 weeks that first visit. Michael and I spent every day together. He showed me the city. We visited museums, talked endlessly. He introduced me to his wife, Greta, and his 2 teenage children, Klaus and Anna. They welcomed me warmly, despite my being American, despite the history. My father spoke of you, Anna said shyly. She was maybe 16, blonde, with her grandfather's eyes. He said you were the American grandfather Karl saved. He said we should always remember that soldiers are people, not just enemies. Klaus, a year older, nodded seriously. We studied the war in school, learned about what Germany did, the Holocaust, the invasions, all of it. It's hard, knowing that our grandfather fought for that, but Papa says Opa Karl was a good man who had no choice. Is that true? I thought carefully before answering. Yes. Your grandfather was a good man. He was forced to fight in a war he didn't believe in. But when he had a choice, when he could have killed me or saved me, he chose mercy. That tells you who he really was. Klaus looked relieved. Thank you. It's hard sometimes. Being German, Being proud of our country but also ashamed of our history. Every country has dark history, I said. America too. What matters is what we do now, how we honor the past without repeating it. Before I left to return to Philadelphia, Michael made a proposal. Next year, June 1985, the 41st anniversary of D-Day, come back to Germany. Bring your family if you want, and we'll go together to Normandy, to Omaha Beach, to the place where our fathers' lives intersected. What do you think? I didn't hesitate. Yes, absolutely yes. I flew home to Philadelphia in July 1984. Dorothy met me at the airport. She took one look at my face and said, "You found peace." "I found a brother," I said. I told her everything, about Michael, about Karl's journal, about the friendship we'd begun, about the plan to visit Normandy together. "I'm glad," she said, squeezing my hand. "You needed this. You've needed this for 40 years. My children were grown by then. Robert was 36, a lawyer in Boston. Catherine was 34, a teacher in Pittsburgh. James Jr. was 32, working for IBM in New York. I called them all, told them about Michael, about Germany, about finding closure after 4 decades. "Dad," Robert said, "you've been searching for this guy my entire life. I'm glad you finally found him. Or found his son, anyway. Does this mean you'll finally stop having the nightmares?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but it helps. It really helps." The nightmares did ease, actually. Not completely. I still woke up sometimes, hearing machine guns, seeing Bobby's head snap back, feeling the bullet punch through my side. But less often. And when they came, I could remind myself, Karl Weber showed me mercy. Not all of the war was horror, some of it was humanity. Over the next year, Michael and I wrote letters constantly. This was before email, before cheap international phone calls. Letters took a week to arrive, but we didn't care. We wrote about everything, our families, our lives, our memories of our fathers. We shared photographs. I sent pictures of my grandchildren. He sent pictures of his family. We were building something neither of us had expected, a genuine friendship across the divide of history. In December 1984, Michael called me. International call, expensive, but he didn't care. "James, I have something to tell you. I've been researching. I found veterans of the 352nd Infantry Division, men who served with my father. I found one man who was there that day, June 7th, 1944. He remembers my father saving an American soldier. He remembers it clearly." My heart raced. "Who? Can I speak to him?" "His name is Ernst Schneider. He's 73 years old, lives in Munich. He was the young soldier, the one who wanted to shoot you. My father stopped him." I remembered. The young German, maybe 20, who'd raised his rifle at my head, who'd been ready to kill me until Karl intervened. "He says he's ashamed of that moment," Michael continued. "Says my father taught him mercy that day, changed how he saw the war, changed how he saw the enemy. He wants to meet you too, if you're willing." "Yes," I said immediately. "Yes, I want to meet him." June 1985, 41 years after D-Day. I flew to France with Dorothy. My 3 children came too, wanting to be part of this. Michael flew from Germany with Greta and his children. Ernst Schneider came from Munich, accompanied by his son. We met in Bayeux, the first French town liberated after D-Day. A small hotel. 9 of us sitting in a private dining room, 3 generations, 2 nations that had been enemies, brought together by one act of mercy. Ernst was small, frail, white-haired. He walked with a cane. When I entered the room, he stood with difficulty, and his eyes filled with tears. "Herr Sullivan," he said in heavily accented English, "I have waited 41 years to apologize to you." "Apologize?" I was confused. "I tried to kill you. I had my rifle pointed at your head. I was going to shoot you. Karl stopped me. He grabbed my arm. He said," Ernst's voice broke, "He is someone's son. We are not executioners." Those words saved your life. Those words changed my life. I crossed the room and embraced him. This man who'd almost killed me. This man who'd been stopped by Karl's intervention. We held each other and cried. "You were a soldier," I said, "following orders, doing what you thought you had to do. I don't blame you. I never blamed you." "Karl was a better man than me," Ernst said. "He saw humanity where I saw only an enemy." We sat down together, all of us, and we talked. For hours. Ernst told his story. He'd been 19 in 1944, conscripted straight from a farm in Bavaria. D-Day was his first combat. He was terrified, overwhelmed, just trying to survive. "After Karl saved you," Ernst said, "he took me aside. He told me that war turns men into beasts if we let it, that the only way to stay human is to remember that the enemy is human too." I never forgot that. For the rest of the war, I tried to remember it didn't always work. War is war. But I tried. Ernst had survived the war, surrendered to American forces in 1945, spent 2 years in a POW camp in Mississippi, of all places. "The Americans treated us well," he said. "Better than we deserved, perhaps. They gave us food, medical care, even let us work on farms for pay. That's when I truly understood what Karl meant. The Americans could have been cruel. They had every right to be. But they weren't. They were human, just like us." After the POW camp, Ernst returned to Germany, became a teacher, spent 40 years teaching young Germans about the war, about its horrors, about the importance of peace and understanding. "I told my students about Karl Weber," Ernst said, looking at Michael, "about the day he taught me mercy. Your father saved more than one life that day, Michael. He saved my soul." Michael wiped his eyes. "Thank you for telling me that. My father never knew. He died thinking his mercy mattered only to James, but it mattered to you too. It rippled outward. That's what mercy does," Dorothy said softly. She'd been quiet until then, just listening. "It ripples. One act of kindness creates more kindness. One moment of humanity inspires more humanity." The next day, June 6, 1985, we went to Omaha Beach. I hadn't been back since 1944. 41 years. The beach looked completely different. The fortifications were gone. The bodies were gone. The burned vehicles, the shell craters, the blood-soaked sand, all cleaned up, restored, turned into a memorial. But I could still see it, the beach as it was. I could hear the machine guns, smell the cordite and blood, see Bobby fall, see Johnny die. My children walked beside me, supporting me, Robert on my left, Catherine on my right, James Jr. behind me with his hand on my shoulder. They knew this was hard. They'd heard the stories all their lives, but never really understood. Now, standing here, they began to understand. Michael walked beside me too. His children followed, Ernst and his son. We walked slowly down the beach, a strange procession of former enemies and their descendants. We stopped at the water's edge. This was where it had started, where I'd jumped from the landing craft into chest-deep water, where I'd seen men die before we even reached the sand. 41 years ago, I said, speaking to everyone. I came to this beach to kill Germans. I was 22 years old, and I thought I knew what war was. I thought it would be heroic. Instead, it was hell. My best friends died here. Bobby O'Connor, who was going to marry his sweetheart. Johnny Martinez, who just wanted to eat his mother's enchiladas. Tommy Peterson, who wrote to his mother every day. Frank Kowalski, who was tough as nails. All dead, all buried in the cemetery up on the bluff. I pointed to the American cemetery, visible in the distance. 9,000 white crosses. I survived because Karl Weber chose mercy, because he saw me not as an enemy, but as a human being. He saved my life when every rule of war said he should have killed me, and because of that choice, I got to live. I got to marry Dorothy. I got to have these 3 beautiful children and 6 grandchildren. I got to have a life. I turned to Michael. Your father gave me everything, and I never got to thank him. But I can thank you. I can thank you for being here, for sharing his memory, for being my friend, my brother. Michael embraced me. We stood there on Omaha Beach, 2 sons of World War II, crying together. Ernst spoke next. Karl taught me that mercy is possible even in war, that we don't have to become monsters, that humanity survives if we fight to preserve it. I've spent my life trying to honor that lesson, teaching young people about peace, about understanding, about seeing the humanity in everyone, even our enemies. Ernst's son, whose name was Dieter, spoke up. My father told me about this day my entire life, about the American he almost killed, about Karl Weber who stopped him, about the lesson he learned. I teach now too, history, and I tell my students this story about how mercy can change the world. My son Robert, the lawyer, always the articulate one, said, "This story, my father's story, Karl Weber's story, it's not just about World War II. It's about the choice we all have, every day, to see enemies or to see humans, to choose cruelty or to choose mercy, to let the past define us or to build a better future." We walked up the beach together, up the bluff where I'd been shot. The trail is well maintained now with plaques and markers. We found the approximate spot where I'd fallen, where Karl had found me. "This is holy ground," Michael said quietly. "This is where my father chose to be fully human. In the middle of hell, he chose mercy. That's sacred." We stood in silence. Then Dorothy started singing, softly. Amazing Grace. Her voice was beautiful, always had been. One by one, we joined in, Americans and Germans singing together on the beach where we'd tried to kill each other. Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind. But now I see. We walked to the American cemetery, 9,000 white crosses and stars of David, perfectly aligned. I found Bobby's grave. Robert Francis O'Connor, 1922-1944. I placed a small American flag by the marker. Then Johnny's grave, Juan Martinez, 1921-1944. Another flag, Tommy's, Frank's, all of them. "These were my brothers," I told Michael's children. "They died so that Europe could be free, so that tyranny wouldn't win. They were good men, the best men, and I've spent 41 years wondering why I survived and they didn't." "Because Karl chose to save you," Anna said, "and you were meant to tell this story. You were meant to show that mercy matters. That's why you survived." Maybe she was right. Maybe there was a reason. Or maybe it was just random chance, and I'd spent 4 decades looking for meaning where there was only chaos. But it didn't matter. What mattered was what I did with the life I'd been given. We visited the German cemetery too, at Le Camp. 21,000 German soldiers buried there. Karl wasn't among them. He'd survived the war, made it home to Germany. But many of his comrades from the 352nd Infantry Division were there. The German cemetery is different from the American one. Darker stone, smaller markers, often 2 or 3 soldiers per grave because there wasn't enough space. It's somber, sorrowful, a reminder that the Germans lost too. Not the war. They deserved to lose the war. But their young men, their sons and brothers and fathers, soldiers who may not have believed in the cause but died for it anyway. Ernst stood before the graves, tears streaming down his face. So many boys. Some of them were my friends, gone, all gone. And for what? For Hitler's madness, for his evil. They died for nothing. Not for nothing, I said. They died. That's terrible. But their deaths helped end that evil. Their sacrifice, willing or not, contributed to the defeat of fascism. That has to mean something. Michael placed flowers on several graves. "These could have been my father, should have been my father by all rights. He survived by luck. Just like you survived by luck and his mercy. We're all here because of luck and choices. That's all history is. Luck and choices." That trip to Normandy in 1985 changed everything. It gave me closure. It gave Michael understanding of his father's legacy. It gave Ernst peace about his past. And it gave all our children a lesson about humanity that no history book could teach. But it was just the beginning of our brotherhood. Michael and I stayed close for the rest of our lives. We visited each other every year. Sometimes I'd fly to Germany, sometimes he'd come to America. We traveled together to Berlin when the wall fell in 1989, to Washington, D.C., to visit the Holocaust Museum, to Munich and Philadelphia and Paris. We were inseparable despite the ocean between us. We attended each other's children's weddings. I walked Anna Weber down the aisle at her wedding in 1992 because her grandfather Karl couldn't. Michael stood beside my son, James Jr. When he got married in 1987, our families merged in a way that would have been unthinkable in 1944. We grew old together, traded photographs of grandchildren, complained about aching joints and failing eyesight, laughed about how we'd survived a war only to be defeated by age. In 1994, for the 50th anniversary of D-Day, we went back to Normandy together, this time with even more family. My grandchildren came, Michael's grandchildren came. Ernst was there too, now 83, but still sharp. We stood on Omaha Beach with dozens of other veterans, American, British, Canadian, German, all of us old men, remembering when we were young and the world was on fire. President Clinton spoke at the ceremony, so did President Mitterrand of France and Chancellor Kohl of Germany. But the words that mattered most came from the veterans themselves. An American paratrooper from the 101st Airborne spoke about jumping into Normandy in darkness, about losing half his unit before dawn. A British soldier spoke about landing at Sword Beach, about the horror and the courage he witnessed. A Canadian spoke about Juno Beach, and then Ernst Schneider spoke. On behalf of the German veterans, it was controversial. Many people didn't want Germans speaking at D-Day ceremonies, even 50 years later, but Ernst spoke anyway. "I stand before you as a former enemy," he said in German, translated to English and French. "I fought for Germany. I shot at your sons and brothers. I did what I was ordered to do, and I have carried shame for 50 years, shame for the uniform I wore, shame for the regime I served, even though I had no choice, shame for the Holocaust and the atrocities committed in my nation's name." He paused, gathering himself. "But I also want to say this. Not all German soldiers were monsters. Some of us were just men caught in an evil machine. Some of us tried to remain human despite everything. And some of us, like Feldwebel Karl Weber, chose mercy when they could have chosen death." Ernst told the story, right there, in front of thousands of people and television cameras from around the world. He told how Karl had saved me, how that act of mercy had changed his life, how it proved that humanity survives even in war. "Karl Weber taught me that we have a choice," Ernst said. "Always, even in the worst circumstances. We can choose to be human, or we can choose to be beasts." He chose humanity. He saved an enemy, and that enemy became his son's brother. That is the legacy of mercy. That is what we should remember about this war, not just the battles and the deaths, but the moments when someone chose kindness over cruelty, chose life over death, chose hope over despair. The audience was silent. Then, slowly, applause. Not enthusiastic, not forgiving, but acknowledging, recognizing the truth in Ernst's words. After the ceremony, American veterans approached us, some angry. "How dare you bring a German here?" one man spat. "After what they did." But others understood. "I'm glad you came," an old soldier told Ernst. "I've hated Germans for 50 years, but listening to you, I realize you were just like us. Just soldiers, just men. Thank you for saying that. That's what the 50th anniversary taught me. Hatred is easy. Forgiveness is hard. But forgiveness is necessary. Without it, the war never really ends. Without it, we're trapped forever in 1944, killing each other over and over in our minds. Dorothy died in 1998, 74 years old. Cancer. It was fast, which was a mercy. She went from diagnosis to death in 6 weeks. Not enough time to say everything I wanted to say, but enough time to say what mattered. "I'm proud of you," she whispered near the end, "for searching for Karl, for finding Michael, for choosing forgiveness over hatred." You became a better man because of that war, not a worse one. That's rare. I became a better man because of you, I said, holding her hand. You saved me as much as Karl did. You brought me back from the darkness. We saved each other, she said. That's what love is. Michael flew to Philadelphia for the funeral, stood beside me at the cemetery, helped me through the worst grief I'd experienced since the war. She was a good woman, he said. My father would have liked her. They were both people who saw the best in others. After Dorothy died, I felt unmoored, lost. The nightmares came back. Not about the war this time, but about loss, about everyone I'd loved and lost. Bobby and Johnny and Tommy and Frank. My parents. Dorothy. All gone. I felt like I was the last man standing. And I didn't know why. Michael visited me every few months. Made sure I was eating. Made sure I wasn't drowning in grief. You have to keep going, he said. For Dorothy. For my father. For all of them. You have to finish the story. What story? The story of mercy, of humanity, of redemption. You're the witness. You're the one who carries the message. You can't stop now. He was right. I had a responsibility, to Karl, to Dorothy, to everyone who died, to tell the story, to make sure the lesson wasn't lost. So I started speaking to schools, to veteran groups, to churches, anyone who would listen. I told the story of June 7th, 1944, of Karl Weber's mercy, of 40 years of searching, of finding Michael, of brotherhood across the divide of war. Young people were always the best audience. They asked questions, hard questions. How do you forgive someone who tried to kill you? How do you trust a former enemy? How do you let go of hate? I didn't have easy answers. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, I'd tell them. I haven't forgotten what happened. I still have nightmares. I still miss my friends who died. But I refuse to let that war define the rest of my life. I refuse to hate an entire nation for the actions of their regime. Karl Weber showed me that Germans are human. That lesson is worth more than any hatred. In 2004, the 60th anniversary of D-Day, I went back to Normandy one last time. I was 82 years old. Michael was 70. Ernst was 88 and too frail to travel. We went without him, but we carried his memory. The ceremonies were bigger than ever. Fewer veterans now. We were dying off rapidly. But more recognition, more understanding. The world had changed. Germany was reunified. The Cold War was over. The European Union existed. Former enemies were now allies. President Bush spoke. President Chirac spoke. Chancellor Schroeder spoke. They talked about sacrifice and courage and the importance of remembering. But I kept thinking about Karl, about the choice he made, about how that choice rippled outward through decades, creating friendship where there should have been hatred, creating brotherhood where there should have been enmity. Michael and I stood on Omaha Beach one last time. Thank you, I said to him. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for helping me understand your father. Thank you for 40 years of brotherhood. Thank you for searching, Michael said. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for honoring my father's memory. Thank you for showing the world that mercy matters. We embraced. Two old men who should have been enemies, who were instead brothers. Ernst Schneider died in 2006, 90 years old, passed peacefully in his sleep. Michael and I attended the funeral in Munich. His family had become our family. His children and grandchildren called me Uncle James. Uncle James. The American who'd been part of their lives since childhood. At the funeral, Dieter Schneider, Ernst's son, now a retired history professor, spoke about his father's legacy. My father taught me that redemption is possible, that we are not defined by our worst moments, but by what we do after them. He almost killed a man. But because Karl Weber stopped him, he spent 60 years trying to make up for that moment. Teaching, spreading peace, building bridges. That's redemption. After the funeral, Dieter pulled me aside. My father left something for you. He handed me a letter. In Ernst's shaky handwriting, Dear James, if you are reading this, I have passed. I want you to know that meeting you in 1985 gave me peace I had never known. For 40 years I carried guilt for trying to kill you, for being part of that war, for wearing that uniform, but seeing you alive, seeing that Karl's mercy worked, seeing how our families came together, that gave me hope. That showed me that redemption is real. Thank you for forgiving me. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for teaching my son and grandchildren that former enemies can become family. I will see you on the other side, my friend. And when I do, I will thank Karl Weber in person for teaching me what it means to be human. Your friend always, Ernst. I wept. Michael wept. We all wept because Ernst was right. Redemption is real. Forgiveness is possible. Humanity survives. Michael died in 2012, heart attack, quick and unexpected. He was 78 years old. I was 90. I flew to Frankfurt one last time, stood at his funeral surrounded by his family, my family. Anna Weber, now 54, held my arm. You were his best friend, she said. He loved you like a brother, like you loved his father. He was my brother, I said, the brother that war tried to prevent, but mercy created. I spoke at the funeral. In German, heavily accented but understandable. I'd learned it decades ago to communicate with Karl's generation. Now I used it to say goodbye to Michael. Michael Weber was my brother, not by blood, but by something stronger, by a choice his father made in 1944, by 40 years of searching and 28 years of friendship, by shared grief and shared joy and shared understanding that humanity is stronger than hatred. Karl Weber saved my life. Michael Weber saved my soul. He helped me understand that the war doesn't have to define us, that we can choose to build bridges instead of walls, that former enemies can become brothers. I am 90 years old. I have lived 68 years since Karl saved me, and every one of those years has been a gift made possible by mercy, by one German soldier who chose humanity over hate. Michael carried his father's legacy with grace and dignity. He honored that mercy by extending it to me, by becoming my friend, my brother. And now he's gone, and I feel like I've lost a piece of my heart. But the legacy continues. Michael's children, my children, the grandchildren and great-grandchildren, they carry the story. They know that mercy matters, that redemption is possible, that brotherhood can transcend any divide. Rest well, my brother. Tell your father I said thank you. Tell him his mercy changed the world. After the funeral, Anna gave me Karl's journal. The original. The one her grandmother had shown me in 1978. Grandfather would want you to have it, she said. You're the last living connection to his story. Please, take it, keep it, share it. I held that worn leather journal like it was made of gold, because in a way, it was. It was proof that mercy exists, that humanity survives, that one choice can ripple through generations. I'm 92 years old now. It's 2014, 70 years since D-Day, 70 years since Karl Weber saved my life. I'm one of the last. Most of the veterans are gone. Bobby and Johnny and Tommy and Frank have been dead for 70 years. Dorothy's been gone for 16 years. Ernst is gone. Michael is gone. Even Karl, who I never got to meet, has been gone for 39 years. But the story lives on. My children tell it. My grandchildren tell it. My great-grandchildren. I have 4 now. They tell it too. Anna Weber tells it in Germany. Her children tell it. The story spreads. The lesson endures. Mercy matters. Humanity survives. Former enemies can become brothers. I still have nightmares sometimes. I'm 92 and I still wake up on Omaha Beach hearing the machine guns, watching Bobby die. But I also dream of Karl, of the German sergeant who knelt beside me in that shell crater and chose to save me. And I dream of Michael, my brother, standing beside me on the beach, telling me that mercy ripples outward through time. People ask me sometimes, was it worth it? The war, the death, the destruction, was it worth the cost? I don't know how to answer that. The war had to be fought. Fascism had to be stopped. The Holocaust had to be ended. In that sense, yes, it was necessary. But the cost, God, the cost. 60 million dead worldwide. 6 million Jews murdered. Entire cities destroyed. Generations traumatized. The world torn apart and put back together wrong. Was it worth it? Ask Bobby's mother, who never stopped mourning her son. Ask the children of Holocaust victims. Ask the German mothers who lost their sons to Hitler's madness. Ask the Japanese families who lost everything to atomic fire. But also ask me. Ask the man who lived 68 extra years because one German soldier chose mercy. Ask Michael, who grew up with a father who carried guilt but also carried grace. Ask Ernst, who learned that redemption is possible. The war was terrible, the worst thing humanity has ever done to itself. But within that horror, there were moments of grace, moments when someone chose humanity over hate, when someone saved an enemy, when someone showed that we're more than the worst things we do. Karl Weber's mercy didn't erase the war, didn't make it okay, didn't justify the death and destruction. But it proved something important, that even in hell, humanity survives if we fight to preserve it. That's the lesson. That's what I've spent 70 years trying to communicate. That's what I'm writing down now, at 92 years old, while I still have the strength to hold a pen. To anyone reading this, whether you're reading it now or decades from now, remember mercy. Practice it. When you have a choice between cruelty and kindness, choose kindness. When you can kill or save, choose to save. When you can hate or forgive, choose forgiveness. Because that choice ripples outward. That choice changes the world. Karl Weber proved it. Ernst Schneider lived it. Michael Weber embodied it. And I've spent 70 years witnessing it. We are not defined by our worst moments. We are defined by what we do after them, by the choices we make when no one is watching, by the mercy we show when we have every reason to show cruelty. June 7th, 1944. A German soldier knelt beside his enemy and chose to save him. That choice gave me 70 extra years of life. That choice created a friendship that spanned 4 decades. That choice proved that humanity survives. I am James Sullivan. I am 92 years old. I am the man who was saved by his enemy. I am the man who found his brother across the divide of war. And I am here to tell you, mercy matters, always, no matter what. Mercy matters. June 6, 2014, 70 years after D-Day. I survived because one man chose mercy. I lived because one soldier chose humanity. And now, at the end of my life, I know that choice changed everything, that mercy rippled through 7 decades, that brotherhood transcended war. And that's a legacy worth dying for, but even more worth living for. Thank you for watching this story to the very end. If James and Karl's story moved you, if it taught you something about mercy, forgiveness, and the possibility of redemption, please subscribe to this channel, hit that like button. And most importantly, leave a comment telling us, have you ever experienced an act of mercy from someone you expected to be your enemy? Have you ever forgiven someone you thought you never could? Share your story, because these testimonies matter, these lessons matter, and your engagement helps ensure more people hear them. Remember, we are not defined by our worst moments, but by what we do after them. Choose mercy. Choose forgiveness. Choose brotherhood. See you in the next video, and thank you for being part of keeping these stories alive.